Let's go to Russia, where voters apparently cannot get enough of Vladimir Putin. They have overwhelmingly approved constitutional reforms that will essentially keep him in power for the next 16 years. But Kremlin critics inside and outside the country are calling the vote a sham. With that, let's go to freelance reporter Lucy Taylor. She's tracking the story for us this morning, joins us right now live from Moscow. So Lucy, good to see you. This, we have to say, really technically was not a referendum as such on Putin's rule, but that really is the headline that's coming out of this. Now, walk us through what happened here.
Well, this result will give Vladimir Putin a chance to rule into his 80s, but the campaign has focused on almost anything else. This amendment to allow him to stand for 2 more terms in office after this current term is one of hundreds of amendments bundled into a single package, which voters had to answer with one yes or no question. And the other amendments in that package take in a huge variety of topics. They outlaw gay marriage, for example. They guarantee a minimum wage and boost pensions. There are even some animal rights clauses in there. And the campaign has played on a sense of national pride and Russian values. The president asked voters to consider their loved ones, think about their children and grandchildren and their respect for their homeland when casting their vote. And he even led a military parade on the eve of polls opening. So this has been a campaign very much about Russian values and national pride, rather than about the president's extending his term limits. But the effect of this result is that he will now be able to stand for 2 more terms in office, zeroing his presidential term count so far. And it also gives him criminal immunity for life. We're told that nearly 3/4 of voters have approved these changes, with a turnout of 65%, but this has been an unusual vote with very unusual rules.
Now, I appreciate that opposition is largely stifled in Russia, but talk to us about what Kremlin critics are now saying in response to this vote.
Well, the main opposition leader, the biggest critic of the Kremlin, is Alexei Navalny, and he's called this vote fake. He said he will never respect or recognise the results of this referendum, and he's accused Vladimir Putin of illegally seizing power and wanting to be a ruler for life. He said, though, that he won't lead protests against this result because of the risks of the pandemic, but he's warned that he might try to get people onto the streets in the autumn if elections held then don't go as planned, and if opposition candidates aren't allowed to stand, as they haven't been before. Other people campaigning against these amendments have complained about the way that the vote has been executed. They haven't been given time on state media, they say, to air their dissent. And rallies and protests are still banned because of that pandemic. So people here criticising the vote. Election monitors also have tried to scrutinise the vote, but they say they've witnessed multiple irregularities. The vote was carried out over 7 days to try to risk the spread of the coronavirus in polling stations. More people than usual were allowed to vote from home or online, and election monitors say it's been difficult because of that to scrutinise the results, but they have noticed violations, they say. And there are some things that are obvious, that this hasn't been carried out in the way that votes normally would, because it's been legally termed as a different kind of vote than a referendum, so the usual rules don't apply. One example of that, the results began to be announced on Wednesday afternoon before polls had even closed, something which would usually be against the rules.
Lucy, thank you for that. That is freelance reporter Lucy Taylor in Moscow.